Hi folks, it's Ed talking to you from the picnic table outside our house on the 4th of August. Now, I'm speaking a few words now just to kind of explain why it is that it's taken so long to produce this episode that you're about to hear. Because it's actually about 6.5 weeks since our last episode, and the episode you're going to hear actually was recorded, like a month ago. And it covers our final effort to complete the wild take and get a sparrowhawk. And as it happens, since then, in the month since then, without sort of spoiling what happens in the episode, I have to say that there's been a huge amount of upheaval, and one thing in particular that really, in a way, puts everything you're going to hear in this episode into quite a different context. And I don't want to speak about it now, but I'll let you listen to the episode, and at the end I'll just explain a little bit what happened subsequently, so stay tuned for that at the end. It is kind of almost of necessity. It's quite a long episode, you'll see why, but we're not working to a pattern here. We don't really mind if it's long. For us, it doesn't make a difference, so it is quite a long episode. Anyway, enjoy the episode and stay tuned at the end. Talk to you soon.
Hello everyone, this is Ed and Anya, and this is Wild Take Podcast episode
8
10
no
11. So the events we're going to describe are taking place over sort of 2, 3, 4 days, actually, not very long. And what are the news, Ed?
Well, the news is that we don't have a sparrowhawk.
Yep.
And it's probably, I don't know, it must be like a week and a half, 2 weeks since we made the first attempt. And like loads and loads of things have happened, and we probably should have made another episode between then, but we've just been so kind of busy, but also just exhausted.
Very low, actually.
And yeah,
sort of mentally feeling very exhausted, and from all the sort of excitement and tension and expectations and just kind of having it all coming down so quickly to basically nothing. Where are we now? We are we actually made a recording here. One of our first podcasts was recorded in the same place. We're in this eco retreat in sort of County Galway, and it's interesting because we've come a full circle now.
Yeah, I think it was episode 2 or 3.
Yeah,
we recorded here, sitting in the car park, and it seems like a long time ago. Really long time ago.
It was in March, so it is a long time ago.
So we after the last podcast, we had everything ready. We got the climbing gear ready. We had bought lots of equipment. We were all set up. We had a nest in a tree that we thought was climbable, and then one day after work we went for it.
It was Tuesday before our days off.
What was the date?
I don't remember the date.
It was like the 19th or the 20th. Where's the notes there? So what happened, first of all, is that on the 20th of June, we went to the nest to look at it, the nest in Sorrel Woods. And we felt as though sort of a countdown was ticking, I think. And the time to take it was very close. And so we went for a kind of final look, which we thought, all right, we're going to be taking it really, really soon, because when we got there, we could see that there were lots of mutes, and we persuaded ourselves that the chick we could see was really big, and there was lots of feeding going on. The musket was flying around, and we saw lots of activity. So we were like, right, it's on. And because it was the 20th of June, we were like, perfect. I remember thinking, perfect, I know exactly what we can call this hawk. It's going to be called Solstice, because it was the summer solstice. Anyway, so on the 21st of June, we went back.
In the evening. In fact, by that point, I hadn't really slept properly for a few days, and I was really tense and scared, and there were so many things that we were worried about. And got my gear up, and Dennis, our colleague Dennis, was there as well to support.
Yeah.
He was like the tech support team.
Yeah.
And actually just moral support as well.
Yeah.
And I start climbing the tree.
Yeah.
Right, clock's ticking now. We don't want to be disturbing this thing for longer than, you know.
Oh, look who's getting good at the old tree climbing.
Well, I've done some practice, so I should be getting better at this. And so I carried on cutting some of the other ones up higher, and the whole time that I was climbing the nest, the female just stayed in the... Sorry, the whole time I was climbing the tree, the female just stayed in the nest. She didn't move. She was there, and basically up until the point of me reaching and looking at her. And it was quite a magical moment, actually. When I finally got to the sort of top, my eyes met her eyes.
Oh my god. She's in the nest.
And then she just swiftly
I just saw her.
Here she goes.
She saw me.
She's off the nest.
just took off in this way that sparrowhawks do. They just silently glide down from the nest. And
That's it. That's the job.
so, and then I remember just thinking, okay, so I need
Okay, I need the bag.
to prepare the bag to take the chicks, but
Wait a second.
and I completely forgot that I first need to check to see how many there are in the nest, obviously. So when I did,
What can you see?
it was quite tough
What can you see?
because I had to.
That's it. Take your time.
I had my main line going over a branch, and I kept slipping. My spikes just kept going down, but eventually I managed to balance myself on one of the branches, and I just kind of peeked over into the nest, and there I saw 2 chicks.
There's 2 chicks.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Yeah, there were 2 chicks, not 3, not 4, not 5, like
Oh shit.
an average sparrowhawk couple would have 5,
Just a second. I'm gonna have a good look.
but there was only 2.
Hello. They're good size, but there's only 2.
And probably males, actually. Downy feathers,
You take a picture.
absolutely the cutest things I have ever seen.
Oh my god. They're absolutely gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And they just looked at me,
Oh, they're so beautiful.
and I just knew immediately that
Okay, so
I
I'm
have
gonna
to
come down.
now. Don't feel like I'd really had this disappointment. Actually, I didn't feel disappointed somehow. I feel like I kind of felt like I knew I feel like I just had this feeling from the moment we found. I don't know, not like we found the nest, but I had the feeling that there were only going to be 2 chicks in the nest. Somehow.
Yeah. Yeah, we'd only seen 2 heads, so.
Yeah, so.
I was pretty bloody disappointed, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, you were actually. You were. I think you were really disappointed, and I wasn't. And I had this hope that like we.
I think it's
we
like,
had
I
a
don't know, I was amazing because I feel like I was the one who was more convinced there was only 2 chicks in it, so I don't know why I was more disappointed. Because I was really certain I'd been telling myself, you know, there's only two, don't get excited, don't get excited. And then, I don't know.
Well, I didn't feel. I remember feeling still quite excited because we had other places we could visit. So
Yeah.
on the same evening, we rushed over to the other place in the garden where we had sighted sparrowhawks, and we knew there was an active nest, and we did see a female.
Yeah, sitting on the
nest and landing
So we were
there.
like really excited, and we thought, great, we'll come back tomorrow, because by that point it was already evening, quite dim, dark
So
evening.
this was on Tuesday night.
It was on Tuesday night, 21st.
And then Wednesday morning we went.
Yeah, Wednesday morning we went back.
First,
And,
actually, we didn't. We went to another place.
Yeah, that's right. We went and we sat and we looked at the nest in the
Mossy Woods.
Mossy Woods, and it's absolutely no activity. We must have been there for an hour and a half,
Yeah.
and we heard nothing, we saw nothing. We just assumed that the nest was abandoned, or the chicks were predated, or the nest just wasn't the nest. There was another nest nearby or something. I remember early on people saying to us, or saying, like in the books and things, and people saying that, you know, you need to have lots of backup nests. You can't just rely on one nest, and we knew that was true, but when we investigated lots of different sites, but once we'd found that one nest in the Sorrel Woods, that took all of our attention. We didn't really revisit the other sites frequently at all. We tried to go to the garden and failed because the dogs that live there kept sort of keeping us out of the garden, and the owner wasn't around. And so but for whatever reason, you know, we just didn't keep our tabs on these other sites. And so in the end, we had this one site that we were hoping for, with this one backup site in the garden that we hadn't been able to monitor very well. And then after that, there were no other options, really. So when the first one failed because there was only 2 chicks, and then we were like, right, so this everything really rests on this this garden one, because if this garden one doesn't work out, then we're gonna have to race around trying to find other ones. So,
but to be fair, like partially the reason why we found it, so we did look for other sites, but where we live it's not easy to find sparrowhawk nests, because we have a lot of really vast woodland where they nest. So walking around actually involves basically scanning through acres and acres of woodland, you know, which we did do in the springtime. But once we found these places, it also took a lot of energy to actually monitor the nest to see at what stage the chicks are, because this whole thing was about how old they are. So we had to go back to the same place every night for the past months to be able to really say, okay, there are chicks and they're this age and this is when they hatch. I'm sure if we do this again, we'd probably have a much better idea of the timelines. But this was just a kind of, I don't know, we were learning on the job, really. So there was no clues, you know. We just had no idea. It's amazing. Like, I mean, okay, there were 2 chicks, but they were the right age. When I picked into the nest, they were perfect for taking. You know, they were perfect for taking, and we could have, you know, if there was 3 of them, and there was a female or a male, we would have taken them, because they were just the right age. So we did a good job at finding the nest and determining the age of the chicks, but unfortunately the luck was not on our side. And unfortunately, the luck wasn't on our side the second time either. Because what happened in the garden was basically the same thing. I climbed this really difficult tree. It actually looked much lower to the ground than as before, for some reason. But this time when I climbed, it was horrendous. The tree was completely covered in ivy, and it was leaning towards one side, so it was kind of on the curve, and I wasn't sure if I was going to disturb the whole nest and make it collapse or not. Eventually, when I climbed and peeked into the nest.
She's smiling at me. I don't know what it means. Anya, talk to me.
There's 2 chicks.
How many?
2.
Are you
There was
joking?
only 2 chicks again.
There's 2 chicks.
1 female and 1 male. Perfect age. The same, maybe a little, maybe a day or 2 older than the ones in the Sorrel Woods. But
wait, just take care.
But yeah, they were.
Take care.
They were just really beautiful, looking at me. And so at that point, I felt pretty low, actually. That was a low moment. I think you probably, if we play this recording, you probably wouldn't hear it in my voice, because the shock of finding another 2 chicks in the nest was just too much. I think I even laughed when I said it to you. But yeah, basically by that point we realized that was Wednesday morning, so we had another whole day. We had
day off from work.
Yeah, we had Wednesday evening and then a whole Thursday day to look for nests. And we knew I kind of had this feeling that we're not going to have the chick this year, because it was obvious to me that to have such bad luck must mean something. It was like the universe was telling us it's just not going to happen.
But we were second guessing everything, so we were sort of, on the one hand we both had this feeling that, you know, that yeah, surely it's not meant to be, but on the other hand a feeling of like, well, no, I mean, if we had other nests lined up, then just statistically speaking, we'd have one that had enough chicks in it, and so maybe this is just kind of an obstacle in our way. And what we really needed to do, and what we tried to do, was to race around and find other nests. And
like
so
we
raced around, revisited sites that we thought were hopeful, but
it was desperate. I mean, we were just kind of running around trying to find plucking posts back to like back
to square one in a way. Very frustrating, but actually with a bit of help from others, it paid off. And one of our colleagues told us about plucking posts he'd seen in the place where he walks his dog. So we raced up there. It's another island near to the island that we'd visited very early on in this process, and it's very similar. It's sort of half conifer, half old beech trees, with a bit of forestry work going on inside, and lots of frogs. As we walked around, there was loads of frogs, so we decided to call it Frog Island. And after spending, I don't know, one afternoon and then a morning, we eventually located a nest. We'd sat overlooking a clearing, and a musket had a called from almost right behind my head as I was lying underneath a tree. And as I rolled over in a quiet panic, trying to see him, he took off and flew in a huge wide circle through the treetops. And that gave us the clue that the nest was nearby, and we found more plucking posts. So we found another nest.
But it was just kind of really last minute. I remember we walked around on Wednesday evening, and I was just so tired. We hadn't slept properly, we hadn't eaten properly for days. And I just remember getting lost on this island and walking through brambles and bracken and just feeling like I was just going to fall over and just die somewhere. It was really bad, I felt so sad, and I was crying, and then it was like a miracle seeing this musket. Actually, it was a total miracle, and suddenly hope. We just had this hope that maybe this is it. Maybe this was just obstacles to get to this point, And on Thursday
But it was the thing about the nest was it was in the very, very top of a very strange Scots pine. It was a very thin Scots pine that launched itself from between a couple of beech trees and curved around in a kind of almost an arc of a circle, like up into the canopy of the beeches. And there was nothing on it. It was just like a pole all the way up until it was above the canopy, where it then sprouted. But there was lots of ivy around all of the branches at the top, and the nest was resting where the trunk of this Scots pine had become almost horizontal at the top of the curve. And it just looked like a really, really tricky one to climb, because you'd be walking on the outside of a curve to a really great height.
Yeah. I was pretty ready just to do it. I was like, yeah, let's just go. I think I was still high on adrenaline, and tiredness just kind of took over my ability to really think properly.
But I think I was quite insistent that because we wanted Dennis to have a look at it, basically, and we wanted to see if it was actually safe, because it didn't look to me like it was a straightforward climb. So I'm really glad that we got him to come and have a look. The next day we went and we grabbed him after work. It was our day off, and
on Thursday.
So Thursday, right? And
in the evening
we brought him to have a look, and he had a good look and pronounced that it was not safely climbable by you, because there was a flaw in the tree trunk 2/3 of the way up, and you could see it when he pointed it out. You could see that at this point it was like where it had been rubbed by a neighbouring tree that had then fallen away or died, but it created a flaw in the tree trunk which made it bend at a sudden angle. And if it's not a big tree, it was only about 20 centimetres at the base. It was a very tall, very thin Scots pine, and at this bend it just suddenly was like, yeah, if you had your weight at the top of this tree, it could just break,
Yeah, killing me and the chicks and everything. But we knew that the chicks were there because we saw mutes right underneath the nest, and we actually found a shell from an egg, sparrowhawk egg, and we saw a female landing close by, and there was plucking.
Yeah, so we knew it was
around.
definitely an active nest.
And it was just so frustrating. And I remember when Dennis pronounced it, I just felt like, this is ridiculous. How can this be that we're finding all this nests and none of them will give us what we want? And I just remember lying down on the ground, like right under the nest, and just looking up at it and just thinking, feeling actually defeated. By that point, I was feeling pretty defeated. You know, I knew that, like I really knew that it wasn't going to happen now. So there was another attempt, actually.
Yeah, so like, well,
It sounds
also
ridiculous,
again
but-
because this is a sort of 6-month thing for us basically. It was a sort of 6-month process, and although we had like lots of helpful input and advice from people, it had basically been our kind of, you know, it was our project, so we were doing it. You know, we were the ones going out and looking. You know, we'd had occasional help from people early on, looking, you know, to identify what's a plucking post and things. But then suddenly, when things started to kind of go wrong, when we had this bad luck, or you know, it turned out that the nests we had organised weren't going to work, we got a bit of help, and that's how I found that nest on the Frog Island, and then the man that we work for was out on a drive somewhere and found a nest in a place where he thought he'd seen them nesting in previous years. And it was a little bit further afield than we'd been looking, so it wasn't a place that we'd been aware of before. And we thought, right, this is it, you know. This is what it was all building up to. We were defeated, and this is our chance. This is our last chance. So, despite feeling like it was just not meant to be, not destined to be, we were like, right, come on, and we drove to this place. And it was
actually on a Saturday night. We were meant to go to a party with friends, and we had to skip that to go to the to look. And I had a really bad feeling when we were driving there. Actually, I had this kind of feeling of defeat, despair, real tiredness, and hunger. We were like high on coffee, and it was just everything felt wrong. You know, it was the wrong frame of mind to be approaching this climb, whatever climb it was going to be. I just felt like unprepared for it, because I guess I've used up all my reserves on previous climbs. And when we got there, it was this like quite nice area, you know, and you know, there was a nest, and it was in a tree that looked climbable to me.
Yeah.
So I was quite reluctant to go up the tree because I didn't know anything about this place. You know, it was a little bit sort of far away from where we had looked for. And as I started climbing it, the tree was actually quite thin.
It was some kind of pine, and it wasn't a spruce, and it wasn't a Scots pine. It was some kind of other pine. It was a part of a plantation, and the branches sort of grew up, in sort of diagonally up from the trunk and away from them. And there was lots of them, wasn't there?
I think there's a photograph that you can post of this tree, and you can see the nest. And so at the very top where the nest is, it's only probably slightly thicker than my knee, I would say. The trunk, yeah. So when I was making my way up, and it was quite hard because I was attacked by midges, and it was a very thin tree, but every time I shook it, I could hear the chicks peeping from the nest. They were just making this like beep, 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 beep noises. I just felt bad. I have to say, I felt really awful. So when I finally was about a meter away,
they didn't do it all the way up though.
No.
When you first put your spikes into the bottom, that's when you heard them peeping. You sort of went duff duff with your spikes, and then we suddenly heard this like, as the shaking went up the tree, we heard this like neek, neek, neek kind of noise, and we couldn't quite believe is that them, you know. And then you took another couple of steps, and it was like yep, squeaking again. And then as it went along, we didn't hear any more.
The parents were off the nest. They were hunting, and we know that there were lots of mutes under the tree.
Yeah.
Big mutes. And
Yeah.
so I made my way, and that was maybe about a meter away, a meter or 2 meters away
Yeah.
from the nest. Start looking up, and I was trying to investigate how I would approach it, because this was a very difficult tree. It wasn't very thick at the top, and there was nowhere to put an anchor to really hold on to.
Because the problem was that the nest itself was in almost a basket of branches, because what the tree did was that the main trunk split evenly into 3 evenly spaced, branches as a kind of basket. And what that meant for your climb was that the nest was resting on all 3 of the main structural branches. So where could you tie on a line that didn't interfere with the nest? There was nowhere.
Yeah.
How could you get?
I couldn't even
get
peek.
high enough to
No.
peek over the edge.
I couldn't, so I realized that I would have to either put my main line over the nest, and in that process might actually, I don't know, accidentally hit one of the chicks or something. So I just had to abandon the climb. I didn't get to see how many chicks there were in the nest.
The problem was that because below the nest, the side branches, the smaller side branches of the tree themselves, because they had grown diagonally and upwards, the tips of them were incorporated into the nest, and so you would have to have removed them somehow in order to peek over the top of the nest, because of the way that they were sort of part of the structure of it.
Basically, it was structurally unsafe to cut through any of the branches. I wouldn't been able, actually, basically, in the way, I wouldn't even been able to squeeze through to get to the nest, because a lot of the twigs that the nest was made of were resting on all these different multi-layered branches underneath it. So there was just no way. So I came down, but I don't know, I had the sense of relief. I felt like, I did kind of feel like, right, this is it then. We have to just stop now.
Why relief?
Relief, I guess, because I was very tired, and I don't think I was emotionally prepared for another nest, to peek into another nest and see what's there. It was really, it's I think if I have to do it again, I would know what to expect, but the surprise and anxiety of looking into a nest is quite a lot. It's very stressful. It's like you don't know what you're going to see there. It's a bit too much. So, it's quite scary, and I don't know. I just felt it's very emotional. It's very moving and beautiful, but also it's like you have to have a lot of energy to get through it, and climbing is really tough. Climbing trees like that is really tough. So I was relieved that I didn't have to negotiate around this nest and having to peek over and try and lower the chick in the bag. And also because I didn't feel any attachment to this particular place. Because we spent all these energies looking for places, and we got to know a particular area, and we had this beautiful story about it in our heads. We got kind of attached to it. I don't know, I didn't really feel ready to change the course of events so quickly. It wasn't like you were saying like the night before we went, actually we had a conversation over, and I was saying to you, well, maybe we should just go for it, maybe this will teach us that we shouldn't get attached to things, we just have to just go for this any nest we find, and get a chick, and you were kind of holding back and saying something in the lines of maybe we're forcing this to happen a bit more, because there was a lot of things that indicated that maybe it wasn't meant to happen. First of all, this bad luck with 2 nests, unclimbable nest, and even when we went to this 4th nest, just so many things prevented us from reaching it. Do you remember when we left work? We just kept being delayed.
Oh yeah, that's so weird.
There was lots of things that happened in the evening.
We just as we tried to get out of work, we were rushing off to go really quickly, and it weren't things that we did. Little things happened. So we were just on our way driving. We were driving away. We were already 10 minutes away. Got a call from a colleague who'd locked her key at work, and we had to go back and unlock it for her. And then there was something else.
Then we realised we forgot the recorder.
and we had to go home to get the recorder.
Yeah,
You know,
so there was just lots of things, and then we had to go to get petrol and get some food, and everything delayed us. And you get the sense that whatever it is, but it's not right. It doesn't feel right anymore. It felt right when we found the nest in the sorrel woods, and we watched it for a long time. We got to know this particular couple. It felt right. It felt right to climb the tree. I was looking at the tree and mentally climbing it for weeks, trying to plan how I'm going to go up and where I'm going to put my, lanyard and main line, how I'm going to use the spikes to access it, and how I'm going to reach. I had this idea over it. I was prepared for it. I wasn't prepared to take a chick from another nest, basically, mentally. So it just didn't feel right. And this is why I had the sense of relief, and I think, because it wasn't the story that we were planning for, it wasn't the kind of, it wasn't our story anymore. It wasn't our chick. Which is really sad, and then maybe that's not the attitude people should have when they do a wild take, but that's what it meant to us. It was this is what wild take meant to us. It meant to be somewhere local, somewhere where we know, somewhere where we found ourselves. I mean, the sorrelwood nest, we found it by following a bird, a sparrowhawk. And we really loved this woodland, and it just didn't happen. So, in a way, that was it. So, I don't know, how do you feel? Do you have anything kind of to say about this?
Well, it's a mistake, wasn't it? It was a mistake to get hung up and attached on one place and think of it in that way. What we should have. I mean, what we should have been doing is making sure that we had 3 or 4 backups that we were perfectly happy to go to and able to climb. That's the mistake we made. That's it. And the consequences are that we climbed the nest. There were only 2 chicks. That's the condition of the license. So we couldn't take a chick from there. So, and we didn't have immediate easy backups apart from the garden, and I felt all right. I mean, I was quite optimistic about the garden. I thought, how can it happen 2 nests in a row that there's only 2 chicks? But that's the mistake we made, and that's the consequences. And maybe, So I mean, maybe that's that's called learning from experience. Because I'm sure we wouldn't make that same mistake next year. If we do this next year, we're gonna, first of all, because we know about searching for nests a little bit, we're going to use less energy in the initial stages, and we're going to find it, I hope, we're going to find it a little bit easier to do what we need to do, which is to locate multiple active nests and keep tabs on all of them, rather than, because we're just a bit more familiar with the stages and the timings and the development and the signs and everything. And I don't know, I mean, like I'm torn in a way to sort of between feeling like sort of regret that we kind of didn't give ourselves the best possible chance but then also sort of trying to be a bit kinder to ourselves, saying, well, this is the first time we've done it, and it's easy in hindsight. It's easy to criticize oneself in hindsight, and then also just saying, well, but also it's really bad luck. What are the chances that the 2 main nests that you have both only have 2 chicks in them? So it's sort of a mix of feelings, really.
Yeah. I don't feel really so kind of critical about it because we did look for a long time for different sites until we managed to locate these particular places. And I just think it was just really bad luck, actually, because we put a lot of energy into looking for places. And even even if we do it again, it can still work out. Not work out. We might have like 4 nests, and one of them might fail, and very, very quickly. So, I don't know. What does it mean that there's only 2 chicks in both nests? Does it mean that the sparrowhawks are not doing well at the moment?
Does it mean it was because the winter was bad? There's not so much food around for them. The winter was very stormy and floody, and very wet. Warm, but really, really wet. So maybe that's the reason why. Having said that, there are other people who found who've done wild takes have found nests with 5 chicks in them. So, other people have managed it this year, but then they live in other parts of Ireland. Maybe it was different. It was very floody around here.
Yeah.
Very, very wet and windy the past winter. Maybe they're both young birds. I think I'm right in saying that young birds often have smaller clutches as they get more experience in raising chicks.
And the older ones have smaller clutches. And actually,
the older ones have smaller clutches.
Yeah, also small. Because they get older, their clutch size.
Okay, but I think initially they have quite small ones as well.
Because the couple in the sorrel woods, we think that they're quite young, and the one in the garden, the female is quite old. She's got very dark eyes, and she's very white. She's got very, very white, stripy body, and
very strong markings.
Very strong markings. So she's quite old. But yeah, this is it. I mean, there's nothing really much to add to the fact that we don't have a chick, and this podcast will probably have to take a different turn, or
come to a kind of
natural end.
I think.
But I think we will.
Well, at least this
chapter is over for now.
Yeah. I mean, we really enjoy, don't we? Really enjoy putting together the podcast. Actually, I think we find it quite rewarding in a way to have a regular review of what we're doing, and also to keep a sort of document of what we've done. Some people take loads of pictures. Some people post, film videos of, family videos. Some people write blogs. Some people keep a diary. And for us, this is what we do. And at the moment, this is, we find it rewarding. So I don't think this is going to be the last episode.
No.
But for this part of it, I think it will be.
We're planning to revisit the nest. We haven't actually been to the sorrel woods. I couldn't bring myself to visit it. I think I would it was so emotional in the last couple of weeks. But we will go there next week, actually this week, and revisit and see how the chicks are doing and what stage they're at, and maybe watch them from a distance to see if apparently there's going to be a lot of screaming and chatting and screaming at the mummy once they start sitting on the edge of the nest.
Yeah, and of course it's been pointed out to us, and it's quite correct, I think, that if we're planning to do this next year, we could do ourselves a big favour by taking the time to drive around all of the previous sites we visited and spending a bit of time listening and watching to see if we can hear those young doing those begging calls, because that would help us know whether or not the places we were at were actually nest sites. The plantation, the plantation, the island, what other places? All of the little patches and gardens and woodland that we visited early on, and that we then didn't think were nest sites. If we go there at the right time now in the summer, we might soon. We might hear the young ones calling, and that could help us find nests next year.
Yeah.
So
meanwhile, this project is over, and we will keep you posted on. Are we going to mention this other thing? Or are we just going to keep it secret for now?
Well, I think. I don't know.
Well, we were gonna mention something, but we might just keep it secret for now. And we might just surprise you in the next episode.
Yeah. Right.
So, thanks very much for listening, and very sorry that things have turned out this way, and we wouldn't be continuing the story of the Sparrowhawks and Ed and Anya. It's very sad. I feel like the disappointment is not, I don't have absolutely no regrets, and I don't think it's a failure at all, because I've gained so much knowledge and so much excitement, and I've had such good time looking for sparrowhawks, and we were watching wild sparrowhawks for months, and this is just the best thing ever. I really enjoyed it. So I don't have any regrets about, having applied for this license, and even the fact that we failed. It doesn't matter, because we've gained a lot with it, and I have the best memories of the spring. I'll never forget all these adventures we did.
I remember when it turned out that the first nest when it turned out the sorrel woods nest didn't have enough chicks in it, and we were faced with this very tricky decision about what to do, how hard to push, what decision to make, what to do, to race around to other nests, to try and find other places, how to proceed, because it wasn't a clear-cut. There's not a clear-cut point at which to say, right, now is the time to stop, now is the time to give up, And I remember our boss, so we mentioned him a lot, and he's amazingly nice man and amazingly helpful.
Yeah, he's been absolutely so.
He's great,
supportive of everything.
And when you started the podcast, we sort of we sort of agreed that we weren't going to kind of talk about details of where we work, and we were going to mention people by name unless they agreed to, and everything like that. So we're not going to say who it is or anything. But I remember when it didn't work out with that first nest, and we were looking at this difficult decision and wondering what to do. And I remember him saying he'd come to check in and see how it was going. And I remember him leaving and saying, just celebrate whatever decision you make, basically. And I think that's actually such a brilliant. I thought it struck me at the time. I thought that's a brilliant way to put it. Celebrate the decision you make. And and having had 2 nests not work out, another 2 nests be found and not be climbable, we had to make a decision, and it might have for a moment felt sad and difficult, but I think we're celebrating the decision now.
Oh yeah,
in a way,
definitely.
We're celebrating it because we
learned a lot, we gained a lot, and because we've got opportunities to do other things.
Exactly.
And these other things are very exciting.
Yeah.
We're not going to say any more.
Right, okay. Time to stop. Yeah, talk to you next time.
Yeah, talk to you maybe next week or in a couple of weeks. With series 2. No, it's not going to be called, it's going to be a wild take, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's a good phrase I think it's a good name for a podcast anyway. Even if it's not about, if it's not about... Right, bye.
Bye.
Hello again. So that was all recorded on the 6th of July, and a couple of weeks after that, we were at work and Anya had abdominal pains that were not related to digestion. Took herself off to the doctor. He sent her to A&E, and she got lots of blood tests. And the upshot of it was, against all against our firm convictions and expectations and certain knowledge, as we thought, she was pregnant, but not with a normal pregnancy. She had ectopic pregnancy, and she was in hospital for a couple of days and had to have some surgery. And so it turned out that she should have been pregnant for all of the. So her pregnancy was about 5 weeks along, and when we found that out, it sort of just suddenly a lot of things kind of made sense to us, and a lot of things that you've just heard discussed in the episode, the podcast episode, if you've listened to the whole thing, and the sort of, I don't know, lots of things. Like, so one thing is the kind of exhaustion that Anya was feeling, maybe, or we were both feeling, I don't know, that sort of seemed to make more sense. The kind of the emotional power of things had seemed to feel quite strong, and maybe that made more sense as well, because Anya's hormone levels are all over the place, and that obviously affects, mood, and of course has an effect on me as well. And this is maybe on a slightly different angle. It also sort of seemed to make more sense of the way that things had actually panned out, because we'd had this feeling, as you heard in the episode, that this had all must have happened for a reason, but we didn't quite understand what the reason would be. And we now, looking back, realise that, if we'd had this going on, having just a couple of weeks before taken a sparrowhawk chick, it would have been challenging in a whole different way. And so it sort of seemed to make sense a bit more after that. And the effects of like the pregnancy are still being worked through. We find it a very, very difficult month, and we're not really sure, how long we should expect the recovery to be, and it's been quite tough. But there is some good news, which obviously you could hear in our voices, even in that recording at the end. We're obviously being quite optimistic and secretive about something, and that will be the topic of another episode, which hopefully you will not have to wait so long to hear. Bye.